Before we get into the show and introduce today's guest, I would just like to thank United Medical Credit for being sponsors of this podcast and of the Business of Dentistry. As a matter of fact, they have a special offer for Business of Dentistry members, 0% merchant fees for the rest of the year, and 30% discount for life after that. You can get that special deal by either going to docoffinvestments.com and clicking on the deals section, or by going directly to www.unitedmedicalcredit.com/TBOD. Thanks again, UMC.
Welcome to the Dear Doc Podcast, where we will discuss the business of running a dental practice with a panel of experts. Now, your host, Dr. Christopher Hoffpower.
Hey guys, this is Doc Hoffpower coming to you from my home studio here in Alvin, Texas once again for the Dear Doc Podcast. Now today's guest is a very special one. Before I actually began the business of dentistry, Dr. Howard Farran had me on his podcast, and it was just a really, really cool thing. I reached out to Howard recently, and he agreed to be on our podcast here and just kind of shoot the shit with us a little bit. Now, Howard, you don't have to worry about censors or anything like that. Our podcast permanently has a little label that says explicit next to it, so we don't have to worry about getting demonetized or mommy's getting upset because her kids listen to it. So how the hell have you been, my friend?
Oh, my God. These are just the best of times. By the way, I got to have a shout out to my granddaughter, Raya, who, when I left, she wanted me to take, I think it's Elsa from Frozen.
I think it is.
So I won't be lonely at work today. So thank you, Raya. Grandpa's loving it. And sorry that I couldn't get the fingernail, but she painted my fingernails yesterday too. But I washed it off 8 of the fingers, but I still got Elsa paint on 2 of them.
You know, those are the best memories that we can make with our kids and our grandchildren. And, you know, it's one of the things that we talked about whenever I was on your podcast is not losing focus on the reason that we do what we do. And my big why is my family and, you know, making a difference in the world. As you may or may not remember, I almost died from a dental infection. That's why I changed my entire life, went back to school and became a dentist. And now, you know, yeah, things are amazing. My world is different than I ever would have imagined as a child or even as a young adult. And, you know, a lot of that is because of that one thing that happened to me. But you are a giant in the field of dental social media, Howard. You were the first out there with Dentaltown. And talk to us a little bit about the journey. I know you've kind of pulled back from that project a good bit at this point, and you were just telling me you've retired from your podcast, which I was surprised to hear. Dr. Travels Campbell will be very upset by that. He's a good friend of mine. I was speaking to him this morning. He says, you tell Howard I want to talk to him again. I'll have to tell him he'll have to be disappointed. He has to be one of the last on the podcast, I guess.
Well, first of all, I got to tell you that I'm going to invite myself. 4 of my 7 grandchildren live in Beeville, Texas, and I'm going to go down there. I got 2 weeks, October 15th for 2 weeks. So I'm going to drive up there.
Co-host?
I do. I want to drive up. I want to drive up there. How far are you from Beeville?
Oh goodness. I don't know exactly from Beeville. We're 32 miles dead south of Houston though. So if you can
they're like an hour south of Houston.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, family first, business second. To me, the pandemic was a really big spiritual awakening for me because I started lecturing in 1990. August 4, Sheridan, Manhattan, the law of unintended consequences. Did my sound go funny?
It was me being a spaz over here. I bumped something.
Oh, and when the pandemic was over, and I for me selfishly, when I got my 2 vaccination shots in January and February, when I got my first vaccination shot, I mean, I'd been hiding from the coronavirus like you, or like, you know, people, you know, wearing the mask, trying not to get everyone infected, you know, and all that stuff. And when I got that vaccine, I felt like, my God, the world's open again. I can go back out there and do all that stuff. And I realized my dad died at 61. both of my grandpas died at 61. My brother Paul doesn't like this data, so he went on ancestry.com and went back 8 generations. 2 turns into 4 to 8 to 16 to 32 to 64. And he said, Howie, the average male is to be 64. And I thought, shit, I'm 59 this month.
Right.
And why the hell on my last 5 years am I going to do another 1,000 podcasts? I got grandkids and I couldn't see them for a long time. And it was really embarrassing because my 4 boys, they think it's all just insanity. It's the flu. It's, they couldn't, and my mom and my sisters. And I think there was only 3 people in my family that took this serious and got the vaccine and did social distancing, the mask and all that kind of stuff. And when I got done, I said, forget this, man. I'm going to spend the last 5 years annoying my grandchildren. And it's just been a blast. And plus, I can still be on your podcast. Like I don't have to do my own. I can go on your show. So if you ever need me or whatever, glad to be on. But
I may hold you to that invitation. I'd love to have you down here. It's funny you're talking about coronavirus or COVID-19. I actually got it before it was cool. So in January, on my birthday no less, January 2020, I actually had it. And I got it again in November of 2021. Social distancing, wearing a mask, all this kind of stuff. My wife brought it home from a jiu-jitsu tournament. And they all got sick. I social distanced from them for 2 weeks, lived in the camper out back. And the day that I came back, they must have still had enough in the air. I got it, and 3 days later, I was sick. So it's funny because I still had antibodies from the first infection when I got the second infection, because while they were sick, I said, I'm going to go get tested for antibodies and just see, if it's safe for me. And so I had the antibodies and, there was much rejoicing, but I caught it anyway. The second time was not nearly as bad. The first time I just wanted to die. The second time was just a high fever for one day and, proof that antibodies work like, science tells us they should. But it's been a wild ride over these last couple of years. And, I think that everyone deals with it in their own way. I mean, outside of our practices even, just as personal human beings, our rituals, our things that we just did every day, they've been so derailed and so changed. But I think in a lot of ways, like you were saying, it truly made a lot of people reassess and take a step back and say, what am I doing and why? It's interesting. I don't know if you're still practicing or not. Are you still doing wet hand dentistry there?
Well, what I've been for the last decade is a solid on the bench, right? I mean, one of my doctors was rollerblading with his 2 kids and fell down and busted his shoulder. So
absolutely, so you can
Coach
jump
blows the whistle. I'm right in. And then he did it again 2 months later. I kept telling him, you need to give those kids up to an adoption agency. He tripped over something else with a hose in the backyard. But so I'm always that guy. And, I always had a dental office because I thought if I didn't have a dental office, now I got to put an operatory in my home and an air compressor and learn how the autoclave works. But I got to say something real quick about your wife in jiu-jitsu. My boys are 3rd generation wrestlers, so I never had an indoor garage because it was always a wrestling mat, and my boys did it from starting at 5 year-round full-time, just like my mom's brother Uncle Chick, who taught me. And I can remember when I was in it, there were no girls, and we did jiu-jitsu, pakwa, boxing, wrestling, all that stuff. And then when my boys were in it, their coach, he had 2 daughters who wanted to do it, and they would just wrestle each other, but he wouldn't let them wrestle with the boys and all stuff. And and I grew up with 5 sisters, and I lived through the sexism. I mean, I could go swim in the Arkansas River 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but my sisters couldn't get 10 feet from the edge. I had blue jeans on with patches ironed to the knees. My sisters were in dresses, and if they got soiled, they were grounded and in trouble. And now it's so cool to see Nunez Alvarez do a one-punch knockout the other day, and I'm really loving the fact that, when we were little, dentistry was mostly a male profession, and now the school's got more women than men, and it's so cool to see women take over jiu-jitsu, the UFC, and dentistry. It's about time.
It's funny. And by the way, you were asking about businesses earlier. I actually own the dojo. It is Stillwater's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu here in town. So when you do come down for the podcast, maybe we can get the kids out there and they can all roll. But it's funny. My wife is actually a veterinarian, which that field has almost entirely been taken over by females. You're hard pressed to find a male graduating from vet school these days. So what you say is not untrue. And I'm also seeing a whole lot more guys in the stay-at-home mom role or stay-at-home parent role, and it's
you just reminded me of you just reminded me of the single largest nightmare Dentaltown magazine ever had. We had a male dentist like you who was married to a female veterinarian in Missouri, and they had me come in and lecture because they had a deer hunting deal. So, you go there and it was all archery in the blinds. And then when the morning hunt was over, I lectured for 4 hours to make it a tax expense. And we went out again that night. We did it for 3 days.
Somebody got upset that hunting was there.
God.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, my. You remember Rich Maddow, the Maddows Report?
Mm-hmm.
Big, one of the biggest newsletters out there. I think he had like 13,000.
Right, Maddow Brothers.
We had 1,000 letters, and they were all saying things like, how could she be a veterinarian and kill a deer? And of course, I'm rational, thinking, well, I'm sorry, have you ever eaten a hamburger at McDonald's? Didn't some cow have to die? But I learned you just don't even. My oldest boy, Eric, his number one sport is elk hunting, and his number two is deer hunting. And I tell him, okay, just don't say anything.
There's some conversations, Harold, and even with patients, and as you become more seasoned as a practitioner, I think you begin to spot the crazy a lot faster. But there's some patients that you don't even talk to, you just back away slowly.
Yeah. But I guess deer hunting is worse than shooting the last living penguin. I mean, it was just amazing how many dentists with 8 years of college they just thought that was the worst thing in the world.
Well, it takes all types in this world, my friend. It takes all types. So talk to me a little bit about Dentaltown, its history, where it is now. I'm still waiting for you to take my invitation to join the business of dentistry, by the way.
And what do you mean by that? Take your invitation to join the business?
I invited you to the Business of Dentistry. Business of Dentistry is my Facebook page. It's actually the largest social media page in the world that's dentist only. We've got 22,000 members, and I keep sending you invites, but you never join.
Oh, yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up. So, you only manage people, time, and money. That was the name of my last book, Uncomplicated Business. And the pandemic hit. And it was, I was in Beeville, Texas. I'm there every Christmas to New Year's with four. My oldest boy's got 4 kids in Beeville. And then the next one, but anyway, then the second one's not married yet. And the third one's got 1, and the fourth one's got 2. And, but anyway, I was sitting there in Beeville, Texas, out there on the porch, and I kept hearing this stuff, but it was Christmas, and America just shuts down, between Christmas and New Year's. It's just the birthday, Christmas. I mean, it's just the biggest deal.
Too much tryptophan. Everyone's still asleep, right?
Yeah, and I'm sitting here listening to this, and I'm thinking, this might be something. That was where my mind was between Christmas and New Year's. Like, what's going on? And then by January, it's like, this might be really onto something. And then, of course, by March, the World Health Organization. But anyway, long story short, it was February. I know enough about time management. I said, okay, if this is going to be a big deal, I gotta take something off the menu. It's not going to be the family. It's not going to be the grandkids. And so I deleted my Facebook app. I think it was like February 10th or 12th or something, and never been back. And by the way, you only got so much time. So I deleted that. So
it's funny, actually. My wife and I got into a horrible, horrible car accident. We were head-on collision, drug addict and his girlfriend. And you were actually the first person to reach out to me and say, hey, I just want to make sure you're okay. And I always wanted to tell you, at the time, things were so hectic, I don't think I even ever got back to you. But that meant a lot. It it spoke to the character of the person you are.
Thanks, man. And I want to say one thing on that. I always ran my posts on Dentaltown or social media. It's just a one-stop shop for dentistry. So anything dentistry is in the news, if it's a joke, if it's just anything dentistry, I throw it all on one page. Just that one guy. A lot of my friends, remember, I'm older. I turn 59 next week. A lot of my dentist friends, they only do Twitter. Right. If they're big time in dentistry, but they're not a dentist, they're all on LinkedIn. The Facebook tends to be, I don't know, maybe the 30 to 50, and the Instagram seems to be the 30 and under.
I think you're absolutely right. It has definitely TikTok, segregated itself by generation. Your Zennials, Millennials, it's interesting. Gen Xers.
But I want to say one thing about the way I post. Dentists, I always get complaints. If dentistry is ever in a bad light, say some dentist gets arrested, he does something bad or whatever, they always email me and say, why are you tarnishing dentistry? Why are you doing that? It's like, dude, I didn't write anything. It's in USA Today.
Just report the facts, people.
Yeah.
That is an interesting point, Howard. Have you found over time that when people engage on your page, that they're looking for an echo chamber rather than expansion of themselves? You spoke earlier about one of the keys to success being the ability to expand yourself. And I think what you're getting at is self-assessment and being introspective. So do you think that we have a problem in dentistry being introspective, that we just want to hear an echo chamber of the same thoughts? Amalgam's good, amalgam's bad, hey, that should be a crown, or hey, your crown margins suck. Is there something wrong with us as dentists?
I do, but I just want to finish this one point in the fact that when I post that, I always would email the dentists too and say, hey, I just saw you're in a car wreck. Saturday I posted something. Anyway, I won't look it up, but anyway, it was a Missouri dentist, and some guy immediately emailed me and said, that is so damn rude. You went to UMKC, he went to UMKC. Why would you smear and tarnish his name and all that stuff? And it's like, dude, I just got off the phone with him for an hour, and we already talked about this. And some of those dentists that I put in the news, I'd send them an email and they'd reply back, and they would need help, and I have a big Rolodex and I would try to help. But if it's already in the New York Times, USA Today, and the Huffington Post, and I didn't write it, but I did. I always reach out to them, and it's made some really interesting frameworks because it's just no one remembers when you go to their birthday party or the New Year's Eve party, but they remember you if you were there when they tripped and fell down. And
you're absolutely right.
So
speaking of which, you do need to tell your associate to be much more careful. So do you think that dentists have a problem with wanting to be in an echo chamber, that they only want to surround themselves with people who think like they do? Because it seems to me that over the years, dentistry has become much more fractioned. You've got like your biological dentist. Then you've got your dentists who think amalgam is the God's gift to every single thing. Then you've got your dentists who think that CAD-CAM is the only thing that should be done. There's so many different fraternities, if you will, within dentistry, and they seem so hostile toward each other. Where did this problem come from? Is it the selection process at dental school? Do we just select for that type of personality? Do you think it's something about the job? Do you think it's because of the fact that patients, evidently, we're the only profession that it's okay to walk up to someone and say, hey, I hate you. By the way, stick me in the face with a needle. Where do you think that issue comes from? Is it a combination of things?
Well, yeah, exactly. With humans, it's multivariate. Like one of the hardest questions I've ever had to answer is, lecturing 1,000 times in 50 countries. I've sat next to a lot of strangers on airplanes for a lot of times, and I'd always say, how would you describe a dentist? Because I can't. I mean, it's such a distribution: half women, half men, millennials, different ages. But you said so many profound things. I hope I can respond to some of them. Number one, on the selection process, I wish they would just close down USA Today. I mean, U.S. News and World Report, college ranking system. Like when I go to small towns in Arizona, I was in Bullhead City, and there was a company there, and I was talking to the owner out there getting gas, and I said, well, what's your biggest limit to growth? He goes, I can't get any mechanical engineers. He says, I could hire 4 right now. And I said, well, what's the problem? He goes, well, ASU, they want to make the U.S. News and World Report. So they get the people with the highest ACT and SAT and got straight A's and this, that. And all my boys from Bullhead City that apply, they don't get accepted. And I sat there and thought, well, this is a state-run university. Same thing with dental school. I listened to dental school idiot deans whine forever until Jack Dillenberg came on, because they'd always say, well, no one goes back to the rural. Well, you only accept if you got a 4.0 in algebra, calculus, and trig, and you think Sir Isaac Newton and Copernicus are, the coolest people on earth. And the bottom line is, I think all the dental schools should only accept people from towns of 5,000 or less for a decade until the rural people get some dentists, because you're not going to go from Beverly Hills to Eloy.
That would certainly change the landscape at the very least. But I think that you may have some other problems just not accepting from the inner city.
And Jack Dillenberg did that. He says, why Arizona, 25% of the land is Indian reservation. And it's all a bunch of white dentists up there that don't speak Navajo going up there. He goes, why aren't there no Navajo dentists? And it's like, well, they had a 3.4 grade point average and you needed a 3.5. And Jack Dillenberg walked into that new dental school and he says, any American Indian born on a reservation in Arizona is automatically accepted. And now when you go up to Tuba City, you see that little Navajo kid talking to a Navajo dentist, and they're speaking, and that connection is 1,000 times more powerful than some Irish guy like me up there. And we saw that same thing with the inner city school. I remember they had this outreach program where UMKC grads were supposed to go to all these schools in our neighborhood, and I told the guy, I said, well, it's 90% African American. 5 miles around, we got 3 Africans American. Those kids shouldn't be seeing Howie. They should be seeing someone just like them, a boy and a girl. I said, they should go to all of them. And they were laughing at me saying, well, thanks. What are you going to sign me up for 30 schools? And I said, yeah, you need to go out there. I said, I'm a dentist because my next door neighbor, Kenny Anderson, was a dentist. And I would go to Sonic Drive-In and make hamburgers and hot dogs with the number one love of my life, my father. My gosh, he was everything. But we made hamburgers. And then I go to work with Kenny Anderson, and he would take an x-ray through a tooth, and you would go in a dark room with like the hottest dental assistant you've ever seen in your life, and then numb it. And I would just love it first sight. When I saw that, I never backed down for a minute. But he was my neighbor, and I don't know if I would have done that if the only dentist I met was Chinese and spoke Mandarin, and I never knew him or went to his office. And it all comes down to the human relationship, and it's with your family, with your friends.
I can't say that I disagree there at all. Question for you. I want you to just put on your prognosticator's hat here and tell me, what do you think the future of dentistry looks like in 10, 15, 20 years? And I want to hear the realistic version, and then I want to hear Howie's version. Like, if you could change the way things are, what would it end up being? What would you like to see it become, I should say, versus where do you think it's realistically heading?
Well, you mentioned amalgam earlier, and, you got to look at markets, and most markets are highly differentiated. Like a lot of people think it's a conspiracy that like 8 companies like Nestle, control 80% everything you buy at Walmart. Well, Kroger, Walmart, the grocery store, most of that stuff's come from like 8 companies, but that's really what you would expect in economics. What you wouldn't expect is a monopoly. Half the world lives under an authoritarian government, and all the other primates live in authoritarian. Gorillas, chimpanzees, and orangutans don't have democracies. It's like, I'm the 400-pound gorilla, and we're not coming down and crossing. So the other half is this democracy thing or whatever with people, and dentistry is a really wide market, and you have 325 million Americans. You got 8 billion people on the planet. And when Americans and Europeans and Australians bash amalgam, I've been to Africa and Asia. I've seen African dentists showing off that they can do a composite, and they're sitting there on a lawn chair with a 5-gallon pickle bucket, and they put on the acid etch, and then they rinse, and the patient rinses and spits, and then they put on the bonding agent and cures, and the patient rinses and spit. And you're just looking at a complete nightmare. And if that would have been an amalgam, it probably would have lasted 38 years, I think the future of dentistry is going to be a broad spectrum. Half of America runs out of month before they run out of money. I mean, they run out of money before they run out of month. I was
going to say, I think the other way.
And if their insurance says, hey, Chris, this only works if you drive to the other side of town and go to this one Medicaid, Medicare dentist, and those people need a dentist, just like the Kardashians need Dorfman to do veneers and all that stuff. Everybody needs a dentist. I don't care if they're a criminal, a saint, a good boy, or a bad boy. They all need a dentist, and we're not the judge, the jury. They're not their pastor. They come in there with a broken tooth. And I think it's sad that dentistry can't do a low cost, because the reason dentists don't take Medicaid, and now Medicare, it looks like they're going to push that through, and Medicare is going to be covered by dentistry. And what's sad is dentists can't do Medicare, because if I give them $30,000, they'll build me a Ford Taurus. But if you give them $15,000, they won't build a Ford Escort with an amalgam. They'll still try to give you the MOD composite with ivoclar and bonding agent and place a rubber dam. And it's like, dude, I'm looking at Mexican restaurants. Just last week, one of my kids wanted to go to, grandkids wanted to go to Taco Bell. And later that week, one of them wanted to go to Macayo's, sit down at a Mexican restaurant. And one time, the bill was like $5. And the same grandchild, the same restaurant the next time was $32. I mean, so you can pay $5 to $30 for 2 tacos. So there's going to be market differentiation. There's going to be, look at a home. I could live in a mansion, 4-bedroom, 3-bedroom. I could live in a van down by the river. So, but what concerns me the very most, and more than anything, is that I know when any of my grandchildren have their first baby, I'll be gone, right? And the circle of life, I'm just like, please don't get old and get married and have a baby, because I know I'll be gone.
You could freeze yourself like Walt Disney.
Yeah. And the founder of Open Dental, he's totally into that. In fact, he kind of let his brother run Open Dental, because he's really into that cryogenic stuff and the liquid nitrogen and all that kind of stuff. You should do a podcast with him on Open Dental and liquid nitrogen.
Absolutely.
But the bottom line is, what I'm concerned about is this: if my grandchildren, if I'm dead and they break a tooth and they go to the dentist, but the dental office is owned by, back in the day, Cigna used to own dental offices out here, and they end up shutting them down. Kaiser Permanente owns like 9 dental offices in Oregon. I mean, if they go to if they go to a dentist who works for an insurance company, well, then who's their dentist? And then if they go to another dentist and it's publicly traded on some DSO, and they say, well, don't do an amalgam or a composite, we'll lose money. Try to do an inlay or a crown opportunity, and you got some office manager that's not a dentist or a hygienist talking about crown opportunities. I mean, I want my granddaughter to go to a dentist, and I want my dentist to follow every religion that ever known to man. My two older sisters are nuns, and they say, if you read Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, Islam, treat other people like you want to be treated, is pretty much the entire message of every good book. And I want that dentist to look at my little Taylor Marie or Raya Roo and say, you need this. And if they're listening to an insurance agent or some Wall Street guy, that's fine, but where's the dentist? And I really think that I've drawn a line in the sand. I mean, all the great companies like Hewlett Packard, Hewlett and Packard were both electrical engineers, and they changed the world with Intel. All the great companies, Bill Gates could program. I mean, all the great companies, the line in the sand for me is only a dentist can own a dental office. And those were all found their way into state laws. I know that a lot of DSOs try to get around it and all that stuff, but it's found in many other countries. But you got dentistry is 200 years old, starting in Paris with Pierre Fichard de Now. There's 2 million dentists on the earth. About 1 million of them practice like you and me, and 1 million of them are what I call bush dentistry. And the bottom line is, it's a sacred, sovereign profession. And look what happened to Boeing. Boeing, they made all their airplanes in Seattle. They made their fuselages in Wichita, Kansas. But the management, for business purposes, moved their headquarters to Chicago. And my God, it wasn't even, I mean, look it up. It wasn't even 5 years, and they're having planes fall out of the sky. And then you go to Honda and read his autobiography, where everything was made in one facility, all the parts. So you might be going to lunch, Chris, and I'm sitting there saying, I don't know who the hell designed those windshield wipers, but man, those things are upside down. And Chris is like, oh, that was me. What are you talking about? Right. And you know, it's all right there. In fact, when the line shut down, fire deal went off. And the most classic story is it went off one time in the middle of the night. And Mr. Honda obviously slept in his birthday suit, and he jumped out of bed, ran down to the line, and worked the line naked at like 70 years old till they got it back, and then solved the problem of why this happened. And everybody's like, sir, you don't have any clothes on.
That is a fantastic story.
Well, you mentioned Walt Disney. He lived above the fire station. My favorite bank, Chase Bank, Jamie Dimon, I've had lunch with him 3 times because he lived when he got a job at Chase. He said, okay, but I need 2 suites because the other one's going to be my bedroom. He didn't have a car till he was like 40. And when he comes down here, he sends 1 ticket to each one of the branch. And of course, my branch knows, you know, I'd marry the guy tomorrow if he asked me, and run off with him. And she said, Howard, I know you love Jamie. Do you want to have lunch with him? I'm like jumping up and down. And he's sitting there and he's looking at me saying, okay, you're a dentist. Okay, what do you like the most about Chase? What do you not like about Chase? What would you change tomorrow? And he's just taking notes. And dentistry, a dental office needs to be owned by a dentist thinking like that. Like, what do my patients need? And if your patients don't have any money, why are you at the Pinky Institute learning full mouth rehab or LVI or Ross Nash? I mean, they're telling you we have no money. They only have Medicaid, now maybe Medicare, and they're only going to give you 1 coin for this filling, and you could do it with an amalgam in the last 38 years. But oh no, not my dentist. They're going to have to still go back to composites and Empress and CAD-CAM. And then one other thing before you said like CAD-CAM, there is a lot of data to these decisions. Like after World War II, when the longshoremen started dental insurance because the president had frozen wages, and that turned into Delta and all that kind of stuff. The minute the longshoremen,
1972 or 74?
1948. 1948, right after World War II.
The Delta. When did Delta take?
World War II was over in 45, but the government didn't change the deal that wages were frozen. So all the factories were blown up in Europe and Asia. And if you wanted to buy a washing machine or a car, the only factories that weren't bombed were in America. So you had the greatest transfer of wealth from the rest of the world to the United States. In fact, it was twice as great of wealth as transferred to the Middle East when they found all that oil. So, you know, and nothing could come in or out of this country without going through the longshoremen's union, and they couldn't get higher wages. So they said, then pay for our dental. And then when that came, and then that turned in, it was in like Oregon, Washington, California, and then that turned into Delta Dental, Washington, Delta Dental, California. But they covered X-rays at 100%. So dentistry in America went from three guys having
everything at 100%. It was a completely different thing it is now.
But they never bought an X-ray machine until it was covered at 100%. Then like Domino's, everybody bought an X-ray machine. And so you have these penetrations, like how long did it take from the telegraph, the telephone, the internet to reach, 2/3 of the homes. And right now, I think that CAD CAM, it never hit 12% of dentists. So we all got the same digital phone. We all got an iPhone, which, by the way, is my number one stock, just because it's a dividend stock, right? You can buy Apple stock and get a dividend of 4%, just like you can buy Johnson Johnson, Pepsi, Coca-Cola. I only buy dividend stocks, but and as soon as your dividend reaches your allowance, you're retired. But anyway, so I would just say that there is math. When you say CAD CAM is the greatest technology in the world, I just say, well, 88% of the dentists have the same amount of years of college as you. They still know math, physics, chemistry, and geometry. Why did the other 88% not buy it? But they bought an X-ray machine. They bought a digital practice management system. They buy all these things. But again, the major problem in dentistry is still no concept of market segmentation. Everybody's trying to make the same $60,000 car to sell in the suburbs where the median household income is $60,000 a year or greater. Everybody's chasing the same guy.
So Howard, hold on. Yeah. Let's take a step back. Okay, so there have been multiple polls that talk about what people use for their buying decisions or use for their decision-making processes. And I think you and I can agree pretty readily here that it almost always comes down to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You run away from fear and pain, and you run toward reward. Basic sales, which I think, and any dentist who can't admit to the fact that they are in a world where they have a service that they're exchanging money for, and that's called selling. Anyone who can't admit that has a problem. But that doesn't mean you need to be a salesman. Most recent Gallup poll shows that dentists are number 5 in all professions for honesty and integrity. We lost out to pharmacists for some reason, but the bottom 5, 1 is marketing and media, 2 is car sales, 3 is insurance sales, then there's congressmen and there's senators. The 5 least trusted people on the face of the earth, professions on the face of the earth. So we obviously aren't seen as salesmen by our patients, which is great because no one wants to be a salesman. But if you want to be good at something and you want to be able to excel at it, you have to call it what it really is. I mean, you don't make chicken salad out of chicken shit, then it'd be a chicken shit sandwich, right? So I think we can agree that words are important and names for things are important. So a lot of dentists have a problem with the word sales, okay? So I'm going to use that word right now very intentionally because everything that I do is intentional. Howard, I want you to lay out a plan because you're a brilliant guy. You and I have spoken before about business practices in dentistry and what makes I think that I can sum it up by saying most dentists up until this point have simply not gone out of business because they make enough money that they can be crappy business owners and that they haven't had to be a better business owner. At this point, though, because of the market squeeze that's occurring with wages going up and costs going up, I mean, our COGS are through the roof right now. Then you've got reimbursements decreasing. So people who are in PPO situation are needing to become better business owners or they are going to go out of business. So I want a plan from Dr. Howard Farran that says this is how you treat a Medicaid population and do amalgams for this population that desperately needs it, because that's a huge market segment. I mean, we're looking at a 50-something% segment of people who either don't have insurance or they're on Medicaid, Medicare. So you treat those people, it's obviously an untapped area. How do you put that plan together so that they can be successful treating those populations in the way that we were just talking about? Because I think that could be more value than almost anything you have done for dentistry up to this point. Now, I think you've done a hell of a lot. But if you can articulate that plan so that people can successfully treat those populations, let's not forget the $500,000 worth of student debt they have too. So let's talk about that. How do we do that, Howard?
Well, first of all, You're not going to like the answer. I mean, I always tell dentists, you can't handle the tooth. You can't handle the truth. Remember that Jack Nicholson movie? You can't handle the truth. Dentists, when I tell dentists the exact answer, it's so funny how all their political beliefs and everything can't handle the truth. And that is the fact that you got to remember. Okay, so I told you I was born in '60. How old were you in 1980 when interest rates were 20.5%? Do you remember that?
I was born in '74. Yes, I do remember it.
Okay, so you're born in '74. When I was a little kid in Wichita, Kansas, on a Saturday, you walk down 8 blocks to school to go play on the playground. And back then, they didn't have fences around, and the gymnasium wasn't even locked. I could walk 8 blocks to my school and walk in the gym and play basketball and lift weights. And when I walked that 8 blocks to school on a Saturday to go play in the gym, every single block had the garage door open and someone was trying to fix this crappy Chevy, and the dad and the brother and uncles and neighbors. And I mean, everybody was a part-time mechanic because the unions, remember when the Bolshevik Revolution started in Russia, it spilled over into Europe, the United States. And that was when we shut down Ellis Island. And when they shut down the Ellis Island, that wave of immigrants coming in, people didn't understand macro. And 10 years later, what they thought was going to happen and what ended up happening was the Great Depression. And the bottom line is, finally, they, after World War II, we weren't going to import these evil cars from the Nazi Germans and the Imperial Japan after Pearl Harbor and all that stuff. And so GM sold 50% of all the cars, and they didn't have to be a good car because there was no competition and absolute power corrupts.
There's an old Polish joke. It says, what is a skilled American worker? One who can put the right nut on the right bolt. That came from the 80s.
Yeah, and so finally, no athlete is going to train hard unless he has a game next week, and then that's when he's doing everything right. So they finally let these Nazi Germans and Imperial Japanese sell their cars in America, and my God, the quality went through the roof. Well, look at healthcare. That's what government does. We don't have a democracy. We're hijacked by a two-party oligopoly, and my freedom. I get to pick between a donkey and an elephant. Are you kidding me? That's a hijack. And what did they do? They set up with all the doctors. It was read the Paul Starr's Pulitzer Star winning book, The Rise of the American Healthcare Industry, that went from 1% GDP in 1900 to 14% by 2000 to 17% now. And every one of those dentists in Mexico, if they come up here to Guadalupe, across the street from my office, where there's 5,000 Mexicans and native Indians and all kinds of, and they catch them doing dentistry on people who live on dirt floors, the mob comes in and they call the police. Remember your mama told you not to kidnap people? Yeah, the police, they arrest them and kidnap them. They go put them in a cage. They go deport them. So it is only that reason only that dentists and physicians make $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year, and half the people can't afford dentistry. At 1900, healthcare costs 1%, and there's nothing in the literature saying, well, grandma's sick and she can't go to the doctor, she can't afford it. It's this so this is what the government always does. They first break something beyond repairable, and then say, well, look at you guys, you can't do it. You need me to socialize medicine, and I need to take down 2 out of every 3 of your dollars, which is theft. If you did that to me in the alley, I'd shoot you. But AOC sitting up there, talking about sexism while she's wearing a miniskirt and talking about how she's entitled to 60% of my income, and she's the one. If they created amnesty right now, how many dentists from Mexico would come up to Arizona and treat Mexicans who don't speak English, who live in poor, and be their dentists? And when I go down to Yuma, Arizona, you cross into Mexico, and it's called Tuba City. Oh, interesting. All their patients look just like you and me. And then when that dentist tries to drive into Arizona and set up a dental office, they arrest them all the time. I always post them. Some Russian lady is in jail right now because she's a Russian dentist. She came to Miami. She went to the poorest area of town, and she started doing dentistry out of her apartment. And she wasn't doing it on your wife or my wife or rich people. She was doing it on people who have nothing. And she's now arrested and sitting in a cage in jail. And that's why doctors make their income. And the state board of dental examiners, it's the judge, the jury, the executioner. They permanently have ruined healthcare to where now you're half the country's begging Barry. The guy's
something that's really interesting there. Oh, I know who you're talking about. So something really interesting there is that the state boards have no jurisdiction over people who are practicing dentistry without a license because they only have jurisdiction over dentists. I always found that to be just mind-blowing, that you could bring someone to the state board and say, hey, there's someone over here practicing dentistry out of their garage. They're not actually a real dentist, and they can't do anything. So it's an interesting corollary to your point there. So let's back this up and boil it down.
I want to go one more example. Some dentist this weekend, he was all crying to me on the phone. I mean, literally, he's crying because born and raised in this town, 5,000, the big employer shut down, and I'm well aware of his politics. I'm well aware, build a wall, that kind of stuff like that. I said, oh, this factory. Well, while I've been talking to you, I just Googled it. By the way, do you know who started that factory? Like, no. I'm like, what the hell? You live in this town? Oh, he was an Armenian. And he immigrated all the way from Armenia, went to your town a century ago, started this factory. I'm just wondering there, buddy, build a wall. Could that Armenian, could he move here today? Oh, hell no. Mm-hmm. Oh, hell no. My ancestors came here from Ireland during a famine 40 years before there was an Ellis Island. And the government is the cause of all the problems. And if you are going to the government for the solution, I hope you're blind or can't read or deaf, dumb, and mute, because what they do is they always break everything until you beg them to fix it. And there would be no need for socialized medicine if the state boards say, well, we have a license approval, and if you want a licensed dentist, here's our list. And yeah, that dentist there, Dr. Juan, is not licensed, and everybody just be's honest. Like, this is where I went to school. I don't care if it's in India, Pakistan, or Mexico City. I don't care what it is. Just don't lie. If you really didn't go to dental school, don't lie and leave the people alone. And my gosh, I mean, I'll give you an example. My house I just sold. I had this McMansion. As each one of my boys still had their original room, and I had 4 one-ton air. It's just a colossal waste of money. I sold that. But who did I buy that from? I bought that from a lady who had to sell it to me because there was a company in America that had a treatment for brain cancer, but the FDA hadn't approved it, and she couldn't get on the study. But they're selling it in Denmark, Sweden, Switzerland, Hong Kong, China. So she sells out and has to go to Copenhagen, Denmark, to spend the rest of her life because some politician like Bernie Sanders, AOC, Reagan, whatever the hell. I remember I was sitting at a fundraiser with the guy here, the legend from Arizona, who was oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. Who was McCain, and I was sitting there with McCain, and I was telling him about this story. I was telling him about this exact story. I said, we have all these Indian reservations, and you let them do casinos and sell cigarettes out taxes. And there's all these hospitals like Manhattan. Why don't you have an FDA-free zone?
Well, technically they do. Howard, you're knowledgeable about this. You're a student of history. The American Indian reservations are countries of their own that are not supposed to have to follow American law at all. So you may have just hit upon the solution there for bringing in foreign nationals. What is the customs treatment of the American Indian nations? What is the immigration treatment of the American Indian nations, since they're supposed to be sovereign countries within the United States? Would it be possible for your Armenian dentist to travel here and to set up shop and have dental tourism within our own country on Indian reservations and bring that source of income into the Indian reservations? I mean, I think once Uncle Sam saw the tax money they were missing out on, they'd either invade the Indian reservations or they'd maybe change their regulations. Hey guys, now a quick word about our sponsor. I'm really excited to announce that we've partnered with United Medical Credit to offer an exclusive deal just to TBOD members. Now, United Medical Credit is a patient financing provider with a unique waterfall lending process. It allows them to approve a much wider range of applicants. In fact, the widest range of applicants in the entire field. I've been using United Medical Credit in my practice for a couple of years now, and I'm seeing great results. They really speak for themselves. I see at least 30% increase in the number of patients who are actually approved whenever going through UMC. And the best part is, patients are accepting treatment. More acceptance, more patients means more revenue. Right now, they're offering TVOD members a special discount of 0% merchant fees until the end of the year. That's right, until the end of 2021, you get 0% merchant fees charged. And they're going to give you a 30% discount for life after that. Now, if you want to claim this offer for your practice, go to www.unitedmedicalcredit.com/TBOD, or as always, you can go to Doc Off Investments, click on the deal section, look up UMC, and register. Thanks a lot, guys, and UMC, thanks for sponsoring.
The scariest thing for me is how many of the younger generation thinks the government is their savior, and they don't talk to their grandpas. Say, no, the government ruined everything, and now you're belling up to the snake to help you. And I just wish, when you talk about what built this country is 500 years of people voting on their feet coming here. And yeah, they did horrible things. They came here and ran the Indians off their land. They brought African slaves. I mean, they built this thing on two mortal sins of what they did to the indigenous people, Indians, and slavery. But they keep getting better.
I'll tell you, Howard, you're speaking about that thing as if your own ancestors weren't victimized too. I mean, the Irish and the Chinese were two of the ethnic groups that were the most poorly treated, other than obviously the African Americans and the Native American Indians. But we are not students of history anymore, and that's very sad. You know, personally, I'm a constitutionalist. I believe in the Constitution as it was written, and that's pretty much it. I think, in fact, if they had just stopped at "and Congress shall make no law" and just put a period right there, that we'd have solved 90%. That's mine. That's my original there. It would solve 90% of the issues we have today. But unfortunately, you and I are sitting in this country as it is today, currently. And we need to, as leaders in our community, say, okay, look, you know, we can rant and rave and rail against what reality currently is and say, back in my day, or we can say, hey, it used to be, or we can say, here is a way forward. And so I always try to take that tact because, frankly, it's a tempest in a teapot otherwise, right? Full of vigor and fury and signifying nothing. We've got to be the source of change. And so I want you to very, very simply say, how in today's society can someone open up a practice? Now, remembering, if they're an American graduate and they have $500,000 worth of debt, that's $60,000 after taxes that they have to pay toward their debt service, which is $90,000 before taxes at a minimum, right? So how is that dentist today going to open up a practice that does just basic bread and butter and help these populations? Because if there's a way to do that, I can see it perhaps with debt forgiveness, that we may be able to do that. And they try to make that to where you go into less served areas. And so maybe that's a viable option. But just between you and I, let's think about it. How could we make this a viable solution? What can we do?
I'll tell you. First of all, when they complain about their debt service, I always remind them that debt service is their economic barrier to entry. No one can practice dentistry unless they go get that, and that's why there's no competition in dentistry. And when people say, "What do you mean there's no competition?" Dude, 20 to 40% of all restaurants go bankrupt in the first 2 years. Dentistry, we see about 1% go bankrupt, and it's always because they had their license taken away for sex, drugs, crimes, something appalling. It's never
divorce and death, right? The three things, the only three things that can ruin a dentist: drugs, divorce, and death. Maybe
drugs, divorce, and death. And my student loans was $87,000. my divorce was 41 times more at 3.8 million in cash. But here's what I would tell the dentist is when you go to a practice manager, like a lot of people think my 30-day dental MBA was a really good thing, you know, as a first in like 1988, and Dentaltown and 30-day MBA weren't the first on the internet, any of that stuff. There was a dentist at yahoo.com. There was dentist at hotmail.com. It was internet letters, you know, like Dave Dodell, Internet Dental Forum, everything. I had the first message board where, you know, you could archive it all.
You had the first Google search engine. You were so proud. Do you remember whenever you had to pay Google to make that search bar? I've been following you for a long time, my friend. That was
oh man, I'm sorry to hear that.
Right.
But here's the deal. Here's the deal. So the first practice management gurus, do you remember Quest? Does that ring a bell? Quest? They were in the 70s.
The name does, yes.
Yeah, and I think they were L. Ron Hubbard, Scientology.
That's why the name sounds familiar. And now hold on. Aside from the religion, management by statistics is freaking brilliant.
Yeah.
And his works are the foundation of a lot of other commonly known management practices. I've actually had some of that training myself, and it's good training. But the religious aspect of things.
And there's a reason Tom Cruise has made more #1 movies than anyone alive today. I mean, he's got like 25 big hits.
He's tapped into the aliens.
He's tapped into methodical management. I mean, you know, where
I'm just being salty. I'm just being salty.
But what they did is they went through and they said, you know, here's the problem, guys. Every dentist in the 70s had one operatory, and if they had two, it was because they brought in a hygienist. And they were just saying, you know, if you would just add 2 more chairs, you're going to make a lot more money. And the advice was solid, and all the dentists
did it. The advice is still solid, though. Okay, my practice. My first practice was a scratch startup. 3 chairs, and you're going to hate when I say this. I worked 3.5 to 4 days a week. I know I was not maximizing my physical plant. I sold it when it was collecting 1.45 million. 3 chairs. Now my other practice is a PPO practice with 7 chairs, and it produces I'm collecting both practices, collecting 1.45. The other one collects 1.45 as well, but it's a PPO practice. It's got 7 chairs, and that tells you something right there. You can still produce out of 3 chairs. And you can produce well. You have to become very efficient, and you have to be very intentional, and you have to make sure you systemize everything that you do. You know?
So when, you know, lecturing in 50 countries, you know, dentistry, the marathon of dentistry, they're all at different parts of the marathon in the 220 some countries around the world. But I noticed, like in Singapore and Japan and Hong Kong, where the government subsidies. I mean, in Japan, France, and London today, the Medicare for dentistry gives you $100 US for a molar root canal. So the dentists in Japan are saying, you know, the dirt's $1 million a square meter. We have 8 dentists sharing 3 operatories. We can't do a root canal, so they don't even offer root canals.
Stack the dentists on top of each other, you know.
There's 168 hours in a week, and that's how they get 8 dentists in 3 chairs. But here's what they do: they say, well, I can't do a root canal, so because I'll lose money. So everybody's focusing on the 2 things that aren't the fees not set by Medicaid, Medicare, Delta, which is implants and clear aligners. And so you go to Japan, and I did podcasts from France.
That's how I was able to go fee for service. I concentrated all of my learning and all of my services and advertising on implants and clear aligners.
Yeah, because it's the only thing that the government hasn't messed up. Like, we only have dental insurance because Roosevelt put wage freezes on everybody and didn't lift it after the war. So they said, well, if you can't give me more money, give me free dental.
So by the way, on that dental insurance thing, because I know this one's a favorite topic of yours, and I know that you like managing your calculator. Whenever dental insurance was first released as an indemnity plan with Delta, not the longshoreman, but with Delta, you had $1,500 worth of coverage, and it was an indemnity plan, which means you got $1,500 when you went to the dentist for whatever you wanted, and they didn't bitch, gripe, or moan. They just paid for it. How much is that $1,500 worth today? What should a dental insurance pay out to their patient today?
Delta started in Oregon, Washington, California for the longshoremen's, and they started at $1,000 max, and that $1,000 adjusted for inflation would be over $6,000 today.
Yep.
And
in dental inflated dollars, there's actually a calculator. There's a calculator you can go online, and you can input different industries. Okay, and one of those industries is dentistry. And just for fun, I went and I put the $1,500 or $1,200 in. And it came out to something like $13,290, which doesn't surprise me because the price of dentistry has gone up more than the price of other industries.
Email me that. I'm Howard at dentaltown.com. I'd love to play around with that.
That's why I mentioned it, because I know you love your little calculators and spreadsheets.
So let me go back to the kids for the exact plan. Let me tell you exactly what I would do now if I was coming out of school. Number one, if you set up an operatory, if you set up a dental office, number one, you have to cross the chasm. You have to work for yourself. When you look at the stats, it's obvious that the average doctor working for a DSO is making about $145, and the average dentist that owns their own practice is making $100,000 or more. So you should look at that macro numbers. So that if you're going to hire associates, you could expect for the average that you could make about $100,000 a year off an associate. So if you're an associate dentist, my joke is, you said this is uncensored, right? I can say whatever I want.
Absolutely.
The older dentist says, senior dentist says, I own 65% of this office, so I'm the president and CEO. And the junior dentist says, well, I bought in, I own 35%, so I'm the vice president, secretary, and treasurer. And the associate hadn't bought in. He says, well, I don't know anything. What am I? And he says, well, you're in charge of sex and music. So if I fucking ever want your opinion, I'll whistle. And sorry, the F word was over the top. I should have just said whistle. But the bottom line is you need to cross that chasm and work for yourself, and to take that risk after graduation, when you don't have wives, kids, you're young, you can work 7 days a week, you can do all stuff. But if you just open up your own office and you had no employees, you had a cell phone, you gave people your own cell phone number and open up an operatory and didn't participate in any insurance,
you could use Stripe.
Off the ground.
Hell, there's actually, you could use a lot of the new cloud-based PMSs could be run off of a cell phone. CareStack can be run off of a cell phone. You can stick a Stripe in there and swipe credit cards all day long. Now, printing, you might have to get a printer that's iPhone enabled to do all that. But the thing that's keeping them from doing this is laziness, though, Howard. They don't want to answer their own phone calls. Well, fear too, you're right. But they don't want to call patients back after treatment. They don't want to talk to patients at all. I think, honestly, a lot of them are socially stunted. This conversation you and I are having, some back and forth here, and there's some things you and I don't agree on, but it's never been an issue, has it? Because we just chat and we say, oh, well, Howard, you're full of shit on that. I think such and such. But that's okay, because by challenging each other, we both grow. That's not how these kids are today. They don't social well. They don't interact well with each other, and that's
again,
what's keeping them from being able to do this.
It's back to that U.S. News and World Report. They don't want to accept a kid that didn't get straight A's in math, physics, chemistry, biology, and nail the DAT. It's all that USA Today stuff. If you were in college and you were well-rounded and you had a girlfriend and you were in a sorority or a fraternity and you made mostly A's and B's and a couple of C's, well, you'd never get accepted to medical school, dental school, or law school. I mean, you look at the law schools and the medical schools in Arizona, they could fill the class 4 times with 4.0s or better. So you get that geek who lived in the library for 5 years and can't talk to anybody. Again, they should be getting him from the Indian reservations, the rurals, the underserved, the underprivileged. They should stop. This FDA process is so good that you should sit in the corner, shut up, and die of cancer while the government's deciding how many people, and not to mention it takes 5 years and makes the drug 100 times more expensive. And then when it's 100 times more expensive, Bernie Sanders can say, well, the drug prices are so high that we need to make them for you free. It's like, no, you made the drug prices high. I'll show you the people who died waiting in line to get the drug. And you're sitting there testing this on rhesus monkeys, when I have a lady right here who's actually a Homo sapien who's 60 years old with the damn disease in her brain,
well,
and you're going to spend 5 years on rats?
Part is that we have such a litigious society that, you know, we demand these protections ourselves. I mean, I see so many times when I'm looking online, and you know, you're obviously a very freedom-minded person. By the way, hold on one second. I'm gonna see if we can do this the right way. Because the last time you saw me...
Damn, you're making me... Oh, my God. Right. You just ruined my day. I went from being bald to, like, incredibly bald. Oh, my God.
So now we're on both ends of the spectrum here, right, guys? It's bad. I see dentists. They're sitting here and they're complaining about someone. And they say, well, someone should do something about this. The government should step in. There should be a regulation. And I'm sitting here and I'm cringing on the inside because I'm like, you guys are destroying our whole country. And then you're complaining about the effects of the things you're asking for. It's like all these jackasses that moved to Texas from California. They fucked California all up. California is a shit pile. It's a burning ass dumpster. So they leave California to come here to Texas. And now... and this is what's really humorous. Now a whole lot of them are saying they're going to go back. They're not leaving. They're saying they're going to go back because Texas now has open carry. And they don't support that kind of shit. The government should make a law. You know?
Because the government wants to be the only one with a gun. They don't want you to have a gun. I mean, God forbid the Germans wanted everybody in the Jewish ghetto to have a 9mm. But when they're leaving California and they're driving down I-10, I'm standing on the road saying, keep driving. You got to go all the way to Tucson and then go into El Paso. Go straight from California. I think they should make I-10 a bridge off the ground from California all the way to Texas.
Well, it would look just like it would look just like my home state. You know, I was born in Lafayette, Louisiana, and we have the Atchafalaya Basin Bridge. I don't know if you've ever driven on that bridge or not.
I have, with Jerome Smith, Carl Bro. Yeah,
I believe that is
good friends down there.
You know Jerome too?
Oh my God, I love Jerome.
His wife Jerome practices in my hometown, Lafayette, Louisiana.
Yeah, and his cousin.
What a small world.
His cousin went with him. His cousin's like one of the best implantologists in the world.
Is that Danny?
And, Danny.
I didn't know Danny was his cousin. I thought
I think
it was
it's
his nephew.
I think it's Jerome's. Cousin, nephew.
Danny's
in the family
man.
tree. Oh my
Absolutely.
God. Gosh. Just unbelievable. But you know, let me tell you something really that really pisses off Texans when I tell them this. But you know, some people say that the Alamo, they stole Texas. They didn't. They weren't defending the Alamo. They went down there. They were imperialist people. And they stole Texas. Well, you know, if you look at the deal, like right now, the United States says they own Antarctica and the moon, but they don't control that. So history always repeats itself. So way back during the day, there was hardly Mexico City wasn't providing mail and roads and bridges and services, and they weren't doing it. In fact, you look at the U.S. border where they were trying to build a wall. 60,000 Mexicans are getting killed in that drug cartel because the government of Mexico isn't doing anything in Baja and 100 miles south of the border. They shouldn't be building a wall on the border. They should do what they did 100 years ago and extend that border down to the area that doesn't have government,
now,
doesn't have safety,
Howard,
anything.
You are a student of history, and I know you are. So I'm just going to bring up one little name. Pancho Villa, my friend.
Yep.
We done tried that shit. That did not go over well.
Yeah. But it shows you that history repeats itself because
absolutely.
It was the same thing. It was the same thing 200 years ago or 100 years ago where you said this is Mexico, but there was no law and order. There was no government services. It was just on a map.
Well,
and now
we very nearly did that during Panama. We took it away, and then we said, okay, you guys can have all it back.
I used to go to Cabo every year with the dentist and Craig Steichen in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we'd fish down there. And we stopped going down there when we realized, man, there's no more government here. The police pulled us over and robbed us. And we thought, and then I went back and I told the manager where we always go, and he started crying because he said it's over. All my best customers aren't coming back.
The thing is,
he said if someone's driving a police car here, it's some drug dealer guy that shot the cops, took the car, and they just drive around in a police car. So there's no law and order.
Earlier we were talking about opening borders. And boy, I tell you what, I know I'm getting some complaints on this podcast, but this has been a lot of fun. So we're talking about opening borders, and we're talking about letting more people immigrate. Part of the problem is the processes that we have are not well thought out, and they depend upon the sovereign country of Mexico. Maybe a company was a Freudian slip. The sovereign country of Mexico, to allow people to go through the process. But in order to go through the process in Mexico, you have to have enough money to bribe the officials for them to allow you to immigrate legally. So how do we fix that problem? How do we fix the problem with third world countries?
Again, I've lectured in Russia. I've lectured in China, Cambodia. I mean, Cambodia was the scariest thing because it was in our lifetime. A new government got in, the Khmer Rouge, and they had like 9 million people, and the government killed 3 million of them. I mean, every country I go to, the number one cause that dentists tell me of all their problems are their own government. Right. And the government, when you start looking at their problems, you're like, oh, don't look at us. Look at this other country. Let's go to war with that country. Let me distract you.
But Howard, you look at Mexico, and by your own words, there's no government there, right? And so what you have instead is armed bands of thugs. So what you need now is a warlord to come over and organize everyone, right?
Well, I think
repeating itself much,
I think the only obvious thing the government should do. I mean, it's the individual versus macro. I mean, it's just scale. It's just geometry. I mean, obviously, if there's 100 guys, the 100 people can do something that one guy can't. I mean, it's just simple leverage. And I think the government should just be in charge of safety. I mean, police internally, military externally, just keep everyone from killing each other, and then get out of their way if they want.
Hold on. What about food and drug safety?
I think you're a consumer. If you want to go to your next, I've witnessed this weekend. Okay, here's this weekend. I'm a dentist. I know all this stuff. And then we go, and I'm not going to say who it was because I don't want this to get back to my mom or my sisters. And the doctor is saying this, and I'm saying this, but change diet and exercise. And then one is saying ginseng and honey and a squirt of lemon. And guess which one my mom went with?
Well, ginseng and honey is way easier.
So people are batshit crazy.
They are.
And as long as they're not hurting anyone and they're not, if you want to go to the store and cure your male pattern baldness with ginseng, do for it. But if the guy's selling the ginseng,
it worked for me.
Yeah, and if the guy selling the ginseng is lying and it's not ginseng and it's really pigeon shit, then shoot him. I mean, I don't care what you do. Just don't tell me this is an iPhone if it's an Android. Don't tell me it's ginseng if it's pigeon shit. Everybody would just quit lying, cheating, and stealing and enforce that. You only need 10 rules. Quit lying, quit cheating, quit stealing, and then let the people do what they want. But if your idea is so good that if I don't wear a mask, you're going to kidnap me and put me in jail. Well, I don't think that's a very good idea. If your idea is so good, you have to shoot me.
I think there's a quote you'd really love. It's always been one of my favorites. I'm trying to remember what the guy's name was. I believe his last name was Howard, the guy who wrote the Conan the Barbarian books. You remember way back then?
Yeah.
His last name was Howard, wasn't it? Something Howard. He
I
lived in Texas.
But I remember Conan the
if I remember
Barbarian.
right. So the quote was something to the effect of, "Seek ye not to find civilized men in civilized land, for only in the land of the barbarian is a man afraid to get his skull crushed in, thus he acts in civil ways."
Nice. Oh, you know who we have to do the podcast? You know we're referring. You know Tim Rainey.
Tim Rainey. No, make an introduction for me.
Yeah, Tim Rainey's about. I'm 59 next week. I think he's about 10 years old. He's probably 69. Email me and I'll email back. And by the way, shout out to this is why I love dentistry so much. My oldest boy moved out to Beeville, and he has a dental problem or whatever. So I call my dentist buddy from Refugio. Not only is he their family dentist, not only does he, when my boy's out of town and the electricity goes out, not only does he drive over there and fix it, not only do my grandkids shot their first shotgun in 22 and their first rabbit on, I mean, it's like family. My sister's daughter was in Ireland and they left all their, they lost their purse and wallets and money. I get on Dentaltown. I go under the international form to Ireland and say, help, my niece is stranded. A dentist, it's like midnight over there, drives over there, picks up her and her 3 college friends, bites him in the house, restores all their money out of his deal. They stay there. I mean, dentists are they're just the coolest damn people in the world. But this Tim Rainey is like an expert on the history of Texas, the Alamo, whatever. To get the 3, I want to bring him to your studio. Just listen to you two talk about Texas and the Alamo and the future. Oh, but can I finish my advice to the young?
Yeah, please do.
Number 2 is the DSOs. I know if you own 100 dental offices, you're probably in my iPhone and I'd probably podcast you. They're not going rural because when you come out of dental school, you're not married. And the number 1 goal of a species is to find another primate to mix gametes with and incubate a replacement. And you're not, you want to be in Dallas and Houston and Phoenix. You don't want to be in Refugio, Texas, and only have 1,000 girls to pick from. And so none of them are going into rural anymore because right now, today, 10% of all the DSOs in the rural don't even have a doc in the box. So if every time you come out of dental school, you get 2 hours away from where a Southwest Airlines plane takes off, and you're going to find a city of 1,000 to 3,000. Now, remember, we're an hour away from driverless cars. Google tested them right here in Arizona for 5 years. So in the future, you're going to wake up, you're going to go crawl in a box, and you're going to tell it where to go, and you're going to go back to bed. And 2 hours later, you're going to wake up, and you're going to be 2 hours out of town, and you're going to go into a town. And then when you go to that town, you go to the mayor, and at the corner of First Street in Maine, there's 7 buildings that have been vacant for a decade. And you say, I need a building, and they give you a building. And then you go to the bank in the town, and he says, oh, you're going to practice here. You're going to set up a dental office here. They give you a signature loan. A $10 an hour job is considered bank. Walmart, if you want to drive an hour into town, that's the big job at $15 an hour. Every one of those guys will do $1 million the first year. They'll have about 40% overhead. And I can give you the list of 10 names that walked out of dental school, $400,000 of student loans, and then found a place where they're the only dentist in the county. And the first year they did $1 million and netted 500 of it. You go to Iowa, they have a list of 20 cities that if you go there, the government state board of dental examiners will kick in $100,000. Delta Dental of Iowa will kick in $100,000, and then you go there and you don't even have to take Medicaid Delta or anything like that because you're the only guy in town. So what you don't do, let's talk about what you don't do. You don't sit there and say, well, I'm going to take Delta and do composites and use a rubber dam and go into the suburbs where every dentist and their dog has one business model. It's like every dentist wants to be Ruth Chris. No one wants to be McDonald's, and nobody wants to go out of town. And my gosh, I mean, half of America is underserved. There's what is it? There's 28,000 towns in America, and 12,000 of them don't have one specialty recognized by the American Dental Association. Yep. And when they come here, they all want to go to Scottsdale. I mean, it might be a better idea just to start doing drugs. Then they go to Scottsdale
or dealing drugs. That would work too. So so far today we have we've gotten advice to deal drugs or do drugs. Practice naked like Mr. Honda did. Been a great podcast.
We even dropped the F-bomb. Sorry about that.
Once or twice. No, always.
Was that over the top?
No, that's not over the top at all. You obviously haven't listened to my podcast. So I'll tell you, we've gotten some great advice, guys. Look, there's a reason why I was able to do what I was able to do. Alvin, Texas is a small town. It's getting bigger, but it was a small town when I came here. And I started off with 27 different insurance plans. And I slowly whittled them away. And I'm actually going to do a CE pretty soon here on how to get out of network and stay out of network. But you notice I own both a high-end specialty geared practice and, yeah, it's not that small anymore. I know I can see you looking at the demographics right now. It was 47,000 when I got here. So the other practice I own is a PPO practice. You know, Ruth Chris and McDonald's.
That is market segmentation. I was just trying to find, you said you're in a small town. What is the population of your town?
When I got here, it was 47,000, but it's grown enormously since I got here. Pearland is the next town between us and Houston, and it was the fastest growing city for 3 years straight. Whenever I was getting out in 2012, 2013, 2014. And since then, Alvin has started accelerating its growth just insanely. It's amazing.
I want to tell you about that post I did. That post where the Missouri State Dental Board is trying to, close down one of my UMKC buddies' office. His name is Michael J. Sawyer, DDS. And here's your good government. He's the only dentist in the town, and someone made a complaint, and they almost tried to take his license away. And he's like, he's the only dentist in town, and one little, woke woman who didn't like something, and the board's like, I think we need to shut you down. It's like, and then why? So we crawl all the way to Bernie and AOC and say, well, we don't have a dentist in our town. No, the government took them away.
Did you know, and hopefully I don't get any trouble for this, with my board, but did you know that the dental boards have actually formed an association, and all the dental boards in the United States are members, and they share expert witnesses to prosecute dentists? That was a little eye-opening to me. I've always considered the board to be the dentist's friend, a mediator between us and the public who was intelligent, knowledgeable, and invested in making sure that dentistry stays the noble profession that it is. But more and more, I'm beginning to worry about their true purposes. And these things that I'm hearing, it's eye-opening. And a little frightening, frankly.
Yeah, well, the only, with America, it started out as truth, liberty, justice, the American way. Now it's money's the answer. What's the question? And the government has always been a mob racket. They only have one goal, and that is to, you cross that bridge, give us a coin. Everything comes back down to money. Oh, you got a drug that cures cancer? Well, come give the FDA millions and millions and millions of dollars, and we'll slow it down in 5 years, which is all fine. I would like all that verified if I had like 3 drugs to pick from. But if I have nothing to pick from and they say, go home and die, it's like, well, you know what? I'll try it on me. And now that government official says, no, no, you don't have any freedoms.
Yeah, and it used to be, honestly, that there were voluntary trial programs where people could say, hey, look, I want to try this out. What do I have to do?
Look at Dr. Salk. When he got the polio vaccine, the first person they ever tested on was him. And then when it worked on him, it was all of his grad students in his lab. Yep. Today, he would be in jail, and so would all of his grad students be in jail. And let me say something. And let me just say something. The grossest thing I've seen during this pandemic is when that pandemic broke out last March, and all the old fatter guys like me who were like, "Oh my God, I'm 58, I'm fat, and I'm old. I better take this serious." My 4 boys are like laughing, but I was real serious. And when all those people that stayed outside and kept the country running and delivering your food and running the grocery stores and doing everything that all the old chicken shits like me were hiding in the basement and didn't want to get killed, now those workers are told, oh, the government says we got to jab this in your arm or we're going to fire you and you lose your job. It's like, what? Those are the people that kept the whole country running, and now they're firing them right and left because they weren't afraid of it in the first place. And then you say, well, is the drug FDA approved? No. Well, my kid, what if you do this and it messes up her reproduction? Or can't we just really slow down and test this on kids? Like, no, you're gonna, it's like, God, I mean, the whole world is mad. And again, it's never the problem. It's always the government solution that's 5 times worse than the problem. I'd rather sit on my ranch and deal with this problem without the CDC. And then if you say anything, like look what Snowden, you look at what Snowden walked away with. And the answer would be like, well, okay, Oliver Stone. I mean, listen to Oliver Stone. You go back to the JFK assassination. If you talk about that, you're a conspiracy guy. But you would just say, well, that was 60 freaking years ago. Why don't you put all those FBI, CIA files on Wikipedia so we could just look at it? Oh, no, you can't look at it. But if you talk about it, you're a crazy conspiracy guy. It's called transparency. It's called checks and balances. Well, if the government put everything in the open.
But the American people have gotten to the point that, and I'm going to tell you right now, this started with McCarthy. And you know that. I mean, you're a student of history, like I said. The American people have been backed into a corner where they truly feel as if they need Big Brother watching over them. And if Big Brother has to have his secrets so that he can operate correctly and keep us safe, and what did Franklin say about that? Oh, come on! You're supposed to jump in with the quote, Howard. Those who will sacrifice liberty for safety will lose both and deserve neither.
Yeah.
Another great quote. I never realized that politically we were very, very close here. There's another quote I got to give you.
Snowden is living in exile for showing us all those evil things from our own government, and the answer just be like, and I could see drawing a line. I could say, okay, let's just go back half a century. Can we just open up every file from 50 years ago back? And the answer is still hell no.
Right.
And you trust that? And then when these people don't trust and look at the mask mandate. When it first came out, it was like, oh, you Chris, I can't believe you selfish bastard buying masks. Those don't wear a mask, save them for the doctor. And then 90 days later,
people forget
Chris,
that
if you don't wear a mask, we're going to kidnap you and put you in a cage. It's just like, make everything transparent. Make everything checks and balance. And healthcare is completely broken because every good dentist in India and Mexico can't come here and practice because the government regulates everything.
I think that Indian reservation idea may have some merit there.
Yeah.
I think you need to get working on that, Howard.
We should do it because if I got all those dentists in Molar City to come up in Scottsdale, Arizona, I'll give you my other business. I did this because right now I'm done. It's grandchildren. My last 5 years is going to be. I'm going to make it in 5 years. My grandchildren want me to die. They're like, we're so tired of Grandpa. Get him out of here. But the bottom line is it's always going to come down to just transparency and checks and balances. And the Indian reservation would be a great deal. But you know what's another great deal? Have you ever done the math on this? Like Uber. Uber was pretty neat because but basically there's 150,000 general dentists who work 32 hours a week or more. 30,000 general specialists work 32 hours a week or more. But anyway, there's like 210,000 dental offices in America, and they're all used about 32 hours a week out of 168. So 81% of all the dental office capacity is not used. And if you started an Uber Dental, where a dentist can come out of school and your dental office is online, and someone calls me on Facebook or Twitter and says, hey, I broke my tooth. And they're like, yeah, I'll be at Chris Huff Pear's office and I'll be there in 20 minutes. And he goes in there's like Uber. We don't need to build one new dental office for at least one full generation of 20 years because 80% of the capacity is idle. I don't know why these kids come out of school with $400,000 in debt, and really you need to build a dental office when 80% of all the dental offices.
So this is actually, I'll tell you what, And I'd love help on this if you think this is a good idea. So here in Texas, I've been at the forefront of helping to change the laws so far as insurance companies go and things like that, to make things much more approachable for dentists and for the insurance companies themselves, but mainly for the patients. So simplifications of language on websites, requirements of having certain benefits on websites, a portal to activate all this stuff, right? And so nationally, they're looking at pushing that out, and they're going state by state, and they're trying to pass that same law in every other state. So what if we were to create a new government agency, since the government likes to screw everything up anyway, right? Or even a state agency. And what we do is we exempt students from their student debt if and only if they will sign a 10-year contract with us. We go to a small town in the United States where there's no dentist anywhere around. We build a dental office, and we build a 4-op office with all of the physical plant on one side of the office so that it can be accessed through a physical wall on the outside if we ever expand, and we can double our capacity, okay? So we can go from a 4-op starting out to an 8-op easily. And we just use that same exact dental plan for every single office, so we only have to buy the same equipment for everyone. If you have a pump that breaks, we've got that same pump. You get these kids in there, and you make it a Medicaid, Medicare practice. You require them to take it, and you pay them a stipend. If their profits in the office go above that stipend, then you pay them for that. But otherwise, they make a healthy living, and they don't have any student debt, but they cannot leave for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, you have taught them thoroughly through CE that they're required to take, how to do other procedures and things like that. You've kept them up to date with current procedures, and you've also taught them how to accept insurances, okay? And how to do everything legally and correctly. At the end of 10 years, you take the keys and you put them into their hands and you say, this town is yours now. If you want to bring in an associate, here is how we can handle that through our program here. And then you do the same thing with that associate. And you take that practice and you double it then. So now you got 16 ops possible, right? If you do that and use the same materials, the same physical plant, the same exact layout for every single office, you have the same training materials for every single office, you have the same CE requirements, same classes for every single office. You've got this huge, vast amount of resources that can be poured into solving the problem that we have, problem of access to care. There's no access to care. There's a care to access problem. People don't want to go to the dentist, or they don't avail themselves of the resources that are there. But this could put light on that, and this could completely wipe out the concentration of dental students in the more populated areas, rather than allowing us to completely cover the country with dental care. And we'd have people who accepted Medicaid and Medicare. So what do you think about that?
There's only one. I love everything about your idea except just one thing.
Tell me
You know where they're gonna go? Where it's the highest chance that they find a lover and a mate and a prey mate to mix gametes with for life. So if you put my buddy in the middle of Antarctica and he gets there and he finds out there's nobody to mate with, it's dead in the water. It's really, really, really. They tell me.
You can open up a side business though, Howard. You know, Uber for lonely dentists.
I asked these young guys, why would you go to Scottsdale? It's the lowest density of people, the most number of dentists. Why do you go there? And every answer I get, have you seen the girls in Scottsdale? Saying, oh, buddy, it's and who goes to these areas? It's always the Mormon guy who graduated from school. He's already married. He already had one kid walking, one in the oven. He's got that wrapped up. So then when Iowa says, here's 11 counties that don't even have a dentist, he's like, hell, I already got my traveling bar and wild woman and kids and fun.
Absolutely.
He's got the whole rock and roll band in a van. He don't need to be in Scottsdale.
Interesting point there, since we brought up earlier sovereign nations within the United States. Utah is the only country that was within the continental United States that was actually invaded by the United States and taken over. Did you know that, Howard?
I did not know that.
Look that one up. Utah was actually attacked by the United States government, and basically they were surrounded and told very politely that they needed to surrender and become part of the United States and become a state. So,
You know what I love
those
most
Utah
about-
boys, man, they're wild. Some of my best
You know,
friends.
all my four boys figured out in school that they said, Dad, with the Mormons, they're all big families. They're all going to be Eagle Scouts. It's all family first. They could walk into any of their Mormon friends without notice and have dinner and sleep. I mean, and when people sit there and say that, well, some people are living on land that's not fertile. Utah was the worst land in America with a brine Salt Lake deal, and they built Salt Lake City. That's why I love the Japanese. They don't have oil, copper, gas. They got nothing except the fourth largest economy in the world.
Nothing except, right?
Yeah. And Utah, what they did with throwaway land in a brine Salt Lake Sea.
Absolutely.
That I think they went there because they knew no one else could survive there. And it's just a thriving metropolis. And love my Mormon buddies because, my God, it's always family first, everything else second. My gosh! In fact, one time I got to tell you this. One time we were hiking South Mountain, and we come out, and this lady comes out of the mountain, and she's crying, and she looks like she's ready to die. And they ran out of water, and she was all scared because her 13-year-old was way back. There was a Mormon picnic, whatever. There must have been 30 people. Everybody grabbed every person in that grabbed a bottle of water and ran off into the desert. They had that kid found and back at the table eating with them in probably less than 10 minutes.
That's amazing. Okay, real quick. The Utah War, 1857 to 1858, also known as the Utah Expedition, the Utah campaign, Buchanan's blunder, the Mormon War, and the Mormon Rebellion was an armed confrontation between Mormon settlers in the Utah Territory and the armed forces of the U.S. government. The confrontation lasted from May 1857 to July 1858. There were some casualties, most of which were non-Mormon civilians. The war had no notable military battles. But yeah, they had formed their own nation.
Can you email me that? Can you email me
it's
that?
It's on your phone. I sent you to it. I sent it to you already.
It's on my phone?
And I'll send you that dental calculator too. You'll love it.
Oh man, great man.
And then we'll have to do this again, and keep you from getting bored.
I'm inviting myself and Tim Rainey. It
That
doesn't have to be this
like
October. It doesn't have to be October 15th, October. I'm going to be there in 2 weeks in October. If that doesn't fit, it'll be Christmas, or I'm there all the time. But
worst case scenario, if you're here in October, let's meet up, and I don't know if you drink or not. We can grab a beer or a scotch or something.
I'm Irish.
Well, I know a lot of Irishmen who don't drink on purpose for reasons.
That means I will drink you out of the table and so go. It's funny though. As I turn 59 next week, in the evening, here's my problem with drinking now. If I go to a restaurant and Mexican food and have a margarita and then go to a movie, I might as well bring a sleeping bag and a cot.
I was going to say postprandial drowsiness right there.
Yeah. So the only reason I avoid drinking is because after dinner I need a coffee or a tea if I'm going to stay up to the movie. And the weirdest thing is if I eat a big meal, I mean, it's better than an IV. I just go get in my chair, lean back, and I'm out for 30 minutes. I tell my doctor, I said, like, am I a diabetic or do I have and he says, how hard the food coma thing? He goes, I got 20-year-olds telling me the same problem. They go to high school, they eat lunch, and then they can't stay awake. So I'm one of those people where every time I eat, I got a drink on an empty stomach and I can't stay awake for the movie later. But we can have beers till it's bedtime.
That sounds like a plan. Have you ever heard the old one about you ask an Irishman a question when you get back?
If you ask an Irishman a question when you get back?
There's no joke. It says, is it true that whenever you ask an Irishman a question, they always answer you with another question? Now, who told you that?
My favorite Irish joke of all time is the Italians were all anthropologists, were excavating Rome, and they went down several thousand years. They found Roman, they found copper wires, and they said they invented copper wires and communication on that. So the Irish, they started digging under Belfast, and they didn't find anything. So I said, wow, we invented wireless.
I love it. Well, my friend, all the world is queer save you and me, and I have my reservations upon thee. It was great to sit here and chat, and we've got to do this again. I tell you, I have an idea for another podcast that I think you would be absolutely perfect at, and I think you would enjoy the hell out of it. But until then, Howard, thank you for giving us some of your time. I really, really appreciate it. And as always, it was really great getting to catch up.
Well, I had fun, and I have to go back to babysitting my granddaughter who's home from school sick. And so I got to go back and watch Frozen for the 18th million time. So you saved my day. You saved my day. And anytime you want to come back, and I really would like to drive up there and see when I'm visiting the grandkids. That'd be fun. And you got to meet Tim Rainey and his son, Tim Rainey Jr. I mean, they know more Texas. They're going to be like you. They know Texas history to the beginning of time, and I've never sat down with you or Tim Rainey and didn't learn a whole bunch of stuff. So.
We'll have to do that. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on the Dear Doc podcast. And, you've wasted another, almost 2 hours of your time at this point. We're going to go long format on this one, listening to the sound of my voice. I hope that you've picked up something in this conversation that you found to be helpful for you and your practice or maybe your life. As always, thank you. This is Doc signing off.
Thanks for listening to the Dear Doc podcast, your source for the business and legal questions associated with your dental practice. Don't forget to subscribe to the Dear Doc podcast on all major platforms.
Hey folks, before I let you go, I just wanted to make sure I thank United Medical Credit for sponsoring this podcast and also the business of dentistry. Go check out their website at www.unitedmedicalcredit.com/TBOD to get a special deal.